Have you ever felt like things simply could not get any worse? Imagine your life is a losing lottery where the grand prize is the right to remain invisible and the losing ticket means the whip and hunger. Here you wake up not because you are rested, but because you are tired even in your sleep. Here you live in a stable that even the livestock would envy, and your own voice is your most dangerous enemy. But before you settle in, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments which city you are watching from and what time it is where you are. I'm genuinely curious to see who has joined us. Now get comfortable. We're beginning. You wake before the sun, though you never know what time it truly is. There are no clocks in the slave quarters, only the cruel, constant logic of the plantation. The darkness presses down on you like an extra layer of scratchy, dirty blanket. You cannot even recall the last time you slept all the way through the night. Perhaps it was back in another life, one with a mother's lullaby and the absence of creaking floorboards, not the kind that groan under the weight of suffering. Here, the only thing that groans is your back. You lie on a pallet of straw, which never feels dry or soft. The musty, sour smell of the shanty hovers above you, fighting for space with the sweet scent of last night's sweat and the sharp edge of someone's unwashed feet near your head. You share your room with more than a dozen others, every one of them stacked like books on a shelf. Except books are never this exhausted, never this afraid to make noise. The first sound is always the same, a coughing fit from old Samuel, whose lungs are more dust than air. You count the coughs, 1, 2, 3, like a metronome for misery. You know it is almost time. Your hands grope bluntly in the dark, fingers closing around your own battered shoes, the leather soft and rotten with years of wet and mud. You slip them on before the rats get too curious. You are the groom, which means you are lucky, they say. It is good work, they say. You are spared the back-breaking days in the cotton field, they whisper, as if the hay and the hooves are made of feathers. In reality, you know what they do not say. The best jobs just mean you live long enough for the nightmares to repeat themselves. You stand, careful not to kick anyone. Every step is memorized. 3 steps to the left to avoid Sarah's outstretched foot. 2 steps forward, pivot to miss the loose board. Duck to avoid the low beam. It is a dance you have learned since boyhood, the choreography of never being in anyone's way. No one likes being woken up, especially not with the day ahead of them. The door creaks when you open it, the rusty hinge complaining about the hour. Outside, the air bites, sharp and cold, sinking into your chest. You pull your coat tighter, if you can call it a coat. It is a rag stitched from rags, and it keeps out as much cold as a prayer. Your breath forms clouds before you, as if your body is already trying to escape. Somewhere beyond the darkness, you hear the restless stamp of hooves. The horses know you are coming. Or maybe it is wishful thinking. Maybe they only care about their feed, not the man who brings it. You imagine that one day you will wake up in a bed where no one expects you to move before dawn, where the only reason to rise is because you are rested, not because there is a whip that calls for your back. You shuffle across the packed dirt yard, counting each step as you go. 25 steps to the pump, another 15 to the stables. You have counted every stone and root on the way, each one a small challenge for bare toes in winter. You know which patches stay muddy year round and which ones freeze hard as iron. In the early morning, the world is gray, silent except for the crows arguing over yesterday's scraps. The stables loom before you, taller than any building in your world. To the master, it is just a barn. To you, it is a cathedral, the place where your entire life is measured out in chores, where your successes mean clean stalls and your failures mean blood. Inside, the air is warmer, thick with the smell of hay, sweat, and horse dung. You hear the soft snuffle of the horses, the clink of a halter chain, the impatient whicker of Old Blue, who always wants his breakfast first. You greet them softly, even though you know they do not care for words. Still, it is the closest thing to conversation you get this early. Your hands begin their work automatically, moving through the motions learned from years of repetition. Your fingers are cracked and swollen, nails bitten down to the quick, but you are grateful they still work. The other slaves say the hands of a groom are lucky. Better to smell of horses than blood, they laugh. You are not so sure. You work alone in the dark, your mind drifting to thoughts you never say aloud. The stables are a world unto themselves. The horses have names and blankets and diets. You have a number and a job and a slab of bread if you are lucky. They sleep on clean straw, changed daily. You sleep where the rain comes through the roof and the mice build their nests. Soon, the rest of the world will wake and your day will officially begin. But for now, it is just you, the cold, and the quiet complaint of muscles already tired before the sun has risen. Somewhere far away, a rooster crows. The sound drifts across the fields and over the roofs, reaching the slave quarters as a promise and a threat. Time to start another day. You wonder sometimes if you would ever know peace, if you would ever sleep through the night and wake to a day where nothing hurts. But those are dangerous thoughts, and you tuck them away as you bend to the next task. After all, there are horses to feed, and your life is measured in what you get done before the sun is up. You step out of the relative warmth of the stables and into the pre-dawn yard again, this time on a mission every bit as predictable as your first breath of the day, drawing water for the master's horses. It is a process so familiar you do not bother to think about it anymore. You are simply hands and legs attached to a list of chores. The cold is an old enemy, one you know by name. You feel it crawl up your arms, slip between your shirt and skin, bite at your ankles, and settle in your bones. You wonder if there was ever a time when you did not shiver. If there was, it lives only in some other man's memory. Now you are just the man at the pump, feeling every gust of winter wind as if it were meant to punish you personally. Your boots, such as they are, slap wetly in the mud as you make your way to the well. You clutch the bucket, knuckles white from cold and effort, and you listen to the sound it makes: wooden handle, iron bands, a few cracks patched with wire. You are not the only thing in this world held together by string and habit. The pump itself is another old friend, rusted and uncomplaining, and it squeals in protest as you begin to work it. Your breath steams in front of you, the white cloud rising and disappearing as if even your body would rather be somewhere else. The first few pumps are always the worst. The water comes out in fits and starts, each splash colder than the last, stinging your fingers and threatening to freeze them in place. You remember once, as a boy, thinking it would be clever to taste the first water out of the pump. That was the day you learned a tongue can freeze to metal and pain can be a lesson. When the bucket is finally full, you lift it with both hands, arms trembling. You tell yourself the horses are worth it, that they deserve clean water. You do not really believe it, but you have learned that lies are sometimes the only way to get through the day. Carrying the bucket is its own test. The yard is a patchwork of ice, mud, and manure, each step a careful negotiation between balance and urgency. The last thing you want is to spill the water and have to start again. The thought of returning to the pump for a second round is enough to make you slow down, though you know better than to let the master catch you dawdling. You reach the stable doors and slip inside. The horses greet you with snorts and stamps, impatient for their morning drink. You pour the water into their trough, watching as Old Blue plunges his nose in first, splashing droplets onto your arm. The water runs down your sleeve, colder now than before. You wipe your arm on your shirt, already stiff with yesterday's sweat and dirt. Each horse gets its share, and you know exactly how much to pour for each one. The master is particular about these things. Old Blue gets a little more, the gray mare a little less, and the two new colts, too young to know better, are watched carefully lest they drink too fast and choke. You remember their names, their habits, which ones like a scratch behind the ear, and which ones prefer to be left alone. The master says this is why you have the job, that you have a touch with animals, as if that counts for something in a place where every day feels the same and no one cares how many horses you can name. As you move down the row, filling each trough, you think about the difference between the horses and the people on the plantation. The horses eat before you do, drink before you do, sleep in dry stalls, and have their coats brushed every morning. Their manes are soft, their hooves are cared for, and if one falls ill, the whole place seems to stop until it is right again. When a man gets sick, work goes on as if nothing happened, unless he is so far gone he cannot stand. Then, sometimes, work gets harder, because now there is one less pair of hands and the same number of chores. You finish the last bucket and step back, wiping your hands on your trousers, leaving streaks of mud and horse slobber. Your fingers are numb and swollen, but you barely notice anymore. Pain is just another part of the routine, as regular as the sunrise. You glance over at the horses as they drink, and for a moment you almost envy them. They have no idea what waits outside the stable doors. They do not worry about tomorrow or about whether the master will be in a bad mood or if someone will remember to leave them a scrap of food at the end of a long day. Their world is smaller, safer, measured in mouthfuls of water and handfuls of oats. Of course, you remember that their safety is your job. If anything happens to one of the horses, an injury, an illness, a missing shoe, it is your back that pays the price. You have seen the whip up close, felt the sting and the heat, and you know that no amount of a touch with animals will save you from a mistake. When the horses have finished drinking, you gather the buckets and return to the yard. The cold is still waiting for you, just as before, but the sky is starting to lighten in the east. You know the next job is waiting, another routine as old as the cracked boards beneath your feet. You do not stop to rest. There is no time, not when the master's horses need to be fed, not when stalls need mucking, not when your day is measured in tasks rather than hours. You remind yourself, with a bitterness that is almost funny, that at least you are not in the fields, not today. At least you have the horses, the buckets, and the cold. You walk back toward the stable, feeling the weight of the empty buckets and the day ahead. You wonder if anyone will notice you have been up for hours, or if they will simply see a slave doing his job and think nothing of it. You tell yourself it does not matter. After all, the horses need water, and who else is going to give it to them? As you step inside the stable once more, you hear the first sounds of the plantation waking up, a door slamming, a dog barking, the distant shouts of the overseer. Another day has begun, just like the last, and you are already behind. You have delivered the water, but there is no time to pause. The horses drink greedily, heedless of anything but their own needs, and you turn your attention to the next task, the morning inspection. The master expects every stall, every beam, every inch of the stable to be spotless and secure, because, after all, his animals are worth more than the men who care for them. You step into the shadowy corridor between stalls. The air inside the stable is a complex perfume, hay turning to dust, the sharp ammonia bite of fresh urine, manure both old and new, sweat, yours and theirs, and that thick, sour odor of wood soaked for generations in filth. It is a smell that never leaves you, clinging to your skin and hair, seeping into your hands, no matter how many times you scrub at the pump. The floorboards creak underfoot, warped from years of damp. You have long since memorized which boards groan the loudest, which ones will betray your presence to the master, should he wander through with his silent, self important stride. You have also learned the delicate art of stepping lightly, shifting your weight so that your feet barely whisper as you pass. All this you do instinctively now, part of the invisible dance that is the life of a stable slave. Each stall is a world unto itself, a box just big enough to hold a horse and just small enough to hold all your mistakes. The horses watch you as you work, eyes rolling, ears flicking at the smallest sound. You know them all. Old Blue with his cracked hoof and bad temper, the gray mare who bites when she is nervous, The two colts who have not yet learned to fear the world outside their hay filled kingdom. You have learned to move slowly, always letting them know where you are. Otherwise, a startled horse is a dangerous thing. Not that anyone cares if you end up trampled, but a lame horse is a disaster. You slide open each gate, feeling for splinters or loose hinges. If something is out of place, it is your job to fix it, or, more likely, to pray it holds until the master leaves for the fields. You scan the straw for anything amiss: a sharp stone, a bit of glass, a rusty nail. You once saw a filly rip her leg open on a hidden wire, and you spent the next 3 days scrubbing her blood from the wood while the master shouted about your incompetence. Never mind that you had not been the one to leave the wire there. The stable is your kingdom, and you are expected to control everything within it. There is an irony in this: being made responsible for a world in which you possess nothing, not even yourself. As you check the stalls, you notice the usual collection of minor wounds and irritations. Old Blue has a scrape on his flank, probably from kicking at the gate. The gray mare has tangled her mane in her halter again. One of the colts has a cough that you hope is just from the dust and not something worse. You keep mental notes, but there is no one to share them with except the horses themselves. You whisper a few comforting words, but you know it is for your own sake, not theirs. You stoop to check the bedding, using a pitchfork to turn the straw. The fork's handle is rough and splintered, and your palms already bear the scars of too many mornings like this. Still, it is better than the whip, and so you press on. You lift the worst of the soiled straw, dump it into a cart, and make a note to haul it out back later. Each forkful is heavy with filth and misery. You remember once you thought yourself lucky not to be in the fields. Now you know that all the luck in the world cannot wash the stink from your hands. There are times when you feel almost proud of your work, when the stalls are neat, the horses calm, the master silent. But that pride is fragile. All it takes is a single loose board, a missed patch of manure, a forgotten bucket, and your reward is a shout, a slap, or worse. There is no room for error, not in a place where the only thing lower than you on the ladder is the muck you shovel every morning. You pause, briefly, to rub your back. The ache is a constant companion, a reminder that you are not made of iron, no matter how much you wish you were. You think sometimes that if you stopped moving, you would simply turn to dust, swept away and forgotten by the next man who took your place. You finish your inspection, moving from stall to stall, each one a small universe of hay, hunger, and hierarchy. You repair a broken latch with a piece of wire, tighten a loose hinge with a stone and some luck, and finally step back to survey your work. To anyone else, it is just a row of horses and straw. To you, it is a testament to survival, a silent record of all the days you managed not to make a mistake. You know, though, that the real inspection is yet to come. The master will walk through soon, his boots leaving neat prints on the filthy floor. He will look for something to criticize, something to remind you that this is his world, and you are just passing through it. You remind yourself to keep your head down, to answer only when spoken to never meet his gaze unless told to do so. These are the rules, unwritten and unbreakable. The morning sun begins to creep through the cracks in the walls, a pale, cold light that makes the dust sparkle in the air. For a moment, you almost forget where you are, lost in the simple beauty of it. But then a horse stamps its foot, a gate rattles, and reality returns, heavy as ever. You take a deep breath, the smells of the stable filling your lungs, and prepare for the next round of chores. There is no end to the work here, only a brief pause before it all begins again. Every rafter, every board, every handful of straw is your responsibility and your curse. You step back into the corridor, pitchfork in hand, ready to face whatever comes next. After all, this is your life, measured out in chores, in aches, in the endless, silent hope that today, maybe, nothing will go wrong. The sun has barely made its first real attempt at climbing over the horizon, and already your hands feel heavy, thick with the cold and with old aches. The stables are inspected, the buckets are emptied, and the horses are restless. Their needs are the only thing that matters on this patch of earth, and so you begin the morning ritual of their feeding. You move to the feed room, a term far too grand for what is little more than a lean to, stuffed with sacks of oats, cracked corn, and dry bales of hay that are sometimes more dust than grass. The air here is thick and close, full of grain motes that catch in your nose and throat, making you want to cough, but knowing better than to waste energy on such luxuries. You pick up the battered scoop, dented and worn smooth by hands like yours, and by time that seems to grind down both metal and flesh. You portion out the oats with a precision the master never notices, but would certainly punish you for lacking. Old Blue, ever the king of the stable, gets an extra measure. The colts get less, but more often there are rules to these things, invisible and absolute. The horses nicker and stamp, impatient for their share, ears laid back in warning if you are too slow. You know their moods better than you know your own. You carry the feed down the row, your arms already tired, your legs prickling with the dull pain that never truly fades. Each horse is waiting, some pressing close to the stall door, others feigning indifference, but all ready to snap or kick if you are not careful. You learn to keep your hands moving quickly, never pausing, never turning your neck for too long. Sometimes you imagine what it would be like to eat before the horses, to walk into the kitchen and sit at the big pine table while the sun poured through the window and a loaf of warm bread waited just for you. The fantasy never lasts long. Reality always comes back, sharp as a kick to the ribs. Here, you do not eat until the animals are fed and the master is satisfied. Sometimes, not even then. You finish the rounds, careful not to spill a single oat. Waste is a sin you cannot afford. The feed that hits the floor is swept up, shaken out, fed to the chickens, or sometimes simply tucked away for another day when things run low. You know all the tricks, all the little ways to stretch nothing into something, to make sure no one can say you were careless or greedy. The horses eat with a kind of single minded joy that you cannot help but resent. They have never missed a meal. Their bellies are full, their coats are glossy, and if one of them refuses to eat, the whole farm is in an uproar. You remember a winter not long ago when the old gray mare stopped eating for a week. The master brought in the vet, paid in silver, and you were up every night, coaxing her to take a mouthful, rubbing her neck, whispering prayers you did not even believe in. When she finally started eating again, there was a celebration in the house. You, of course, got nothing but an extra list of chores. When the feeding is done, you step out into the open air, your stomach tight and hollow. The smell of the horse's breakfast hangs in the stable, rich and sweet. It clings to your skin and settles deep into your hunger. The thought of food makes your mouth water, but you do not let yourself dwell on it. That way lies madness, or worse, hope. You make your way back toward the slave quarters, slipping through the door just as the first shouts of the overseer ring out across the yard. Inside, it is chaos. Men and women pulling on shirts, braiding hair, tying worn shoes with strips of old cloth. The air is thick with exhaustion and the sour smell of too many bodies in too little space. Someone has started a fire in the tiny hearth, more smoke than heat, and the promise of something, anything, to eat draws a crowd. Your breakfast, if you can call it that, waits in a battered tin bowl, cold cornmeal mush, yesterday's leftovers, already forming a thick skin across the top. If you are lucky, there might be a strip of salt pork or a bit of molasses stirred in, but today is not a lucky day. You spoon the mush into your mouth, forcing yourself to chew, to swallow, to ignore the ache in your belly that says this is not enough. It never is. You eat quickly, eyes down, mindful of the dozen other hungry mouths waiting their turn. There is never enough for everyone, not really, and you have learned the hard way not to linger over your food. The strongest eat first. The youngest sometimes go without. You are somewhere in between, old enough to know better, young enough to still hope for a day when things might change. The fire dies down quickly, and you scrape your bowl clean with a piece of bread hard enough to crack a tooth. The taste is bland, the texture gritty, but you force it down anyway. Hunger is a companion now, one you know as intimately as you know the stables themselves. Breakfast does not last long, and soon the overseer's voice is back, barking orders, snapping the day into motion. There is no rest, no time to dream. You wipe your mouth on the back of your hand, sling your coat over your shoulder, and head out into the yard once more. The horses are waiting, and so is the master, though he does not know your name and likely never will. Your place is clear, as certain as the rising sun and the empty bowl in your hands. You belong to the stable, to the chores, to the endless cycle of hunger and work and disappointment. As you return to your duties, you glance back at the quarters, at the other faces as drawn and tired as your own. You wonder, not for the first time, what it would be like to eat until you were full, to sleep until you woke up by choice, to live even a single day where your needs came before those of another creature, man or beast. But these are foolish thoughts, and you bury them deep as you take up the feed buckets once more. The day is only just beginning, and there is work to do. There is always work to do. You have learned through years of hard repetition to measure time not by clocks, but by footsteps. When the master's boots strike the yard, a rhythm of authority and impatience, every part of you tenses. The sound of his approach is as effective a signal as a whip crack. It is a sound that freezes your blood even now, after so many endless mornings. There is a small window of time, never enough, between the feeding and the master's inspection. In those moments, you become a whirlwind, racing from stall to stall, brush and rag in hand, trying to chase away every hint of dust or manure. You are painfully aware that the horses are cleaner, better fed, and better housed than you will ever be. The irony is not lost on you, but it is not the sort you can afford to laugh at. The master is a man who demands order, though he has never once lifted a broom or a pitchfork in his own life. His presence is announced by the faint scent of cologne, citrus, and spice, an odor so foreign to the stable that it seems to fight with the ammonia and sweat for dominance. You recognize the scent before you see him, your body already moving faster, your breath held tight in your chest. You work the brush over Old Blue's coat, making sure every bit of mud is gone. You rub the gray mare's legs, pick out the last of the dried manure from her hooves, smooth the tangled straw in the colt's stalls. Your hands move quickly, but not so quickly that you seem frantic. Frantic looks suspicious, and suspicion brings trouble. Everything you do is measured, practiced, the performance of a man who must hide both effort and exhaustion behind a mask of calm. The master steps into the stables, his boots clean, his clothes as crisp as if they have never touched real work. He pauses just inside the doorway, his gaze sweeping over everything with a kind of lazy contempt, as if he is searching for a reason to be disappointed. Sometimes you think he likes disappointment. It gives him something to do, a way to remind you of your place. His eyes pass over you, lingering on your hands, your face, your shirt. He sees the filth, the sweat, the calluses, and wrinkles his nose, as though you are a stain that cannot be scrubbed away. You keep your head down, your mouth shut. You have learned to answer only when spoken to never offer more than is demanded. The master does not want conversation, only obedience. He begins his inspection with the horses, of course. He speaks to them in soft tones, stroking their necks, checking their legs, making little noises of approval or annoyance. To an outsider, it might look like affection, but you know better. His love is conditional, measured in how well the animals perform, how shiny their coats are, how perfectly they respond to his hand. Next, he turns to the stalls. He runs a finger along the boards, checking for dust. He lifts the feed bucket, examines the bedding, tests the latches. Every detail matters. If he finds a speck of dirt, a crooked hinge, a tuft of hay in the wrong place, there will be questions, sharp, pointed questions with no right answers. Who cleaned this? Why is this here? Is this how you show respect for my property? You answer quietly, respectfully, never meeting his eyes. You apologize before you are told, promise to do better before the accusation even leaves his lips. Sometimes you wonder what it would be like to own something, anything, enough to care this much about its condition. But that is not your world. In your world, you are what is owned. You are the property that must always shine. The master's inspection ends with a glance back at you, a final, silent judgment. If he is in a good mood, he might nod and leave without a word. If he is not, he might find fault with your work, or with your clothes, or with your very presence. There are days when nothing you do is enough, when perfection is just another word for punishment delayed. Today, he stops beside Old Blue's stall, frowning at a faint scuff on the gate. You see it too, so small you missed it in your frantic rush. He runs his finger over it, turns to you, and raises an eyebrow. You mumble an apology, already reaching for a rag, scrubbing at the wood until your knuckles sting. The master watches you, silent and amused, until he is satisfied. He does not praise you, he does not need to. The absence of punishment is reward enough. When he finally leaves, the tension drains from your shoulders, replaced by a deep, shuddering fatigue. You let yourself exhale just for a moment before you start the next round of chores. The horses are restless again, and the stalls already look less clean than they did an hour ago. Perfection is a moving target, one you are always chasing and never catching. You glance down at yourself, shirt stained with sweat, hands rough with work, boots caked with mud. The master's horses are shining, but you are invisible. You laugh just a little, the sound bitter and small. You are not meant to shine. You are only meant to serve. As you gather your tools and return to your endless routine, you think about the master's cologne, how it hangs in the air long after he is gone. It is a reminder of the world you are never allowed to enter, a world of comfort and choice and dignity. In your world, the only scent is the stink of work. The only reward is survival. And so, as the morning slips into afternoon, you keep your head down and your hands busy. Everything must shine, except you. You have just finished scrubbing away the master's disappointment when the next job comes for you, shoemaking, or more precisely, shoe fixing, because nothing on this plantation is ever really new. The horse's hooves wait for no one, and the master's favorite gelding has thrown a shoe again. The only sound you want less than the master's voice is the ring of a loose shoe on the hard dirt, echoing accusation with every step. You know your way to the far end of the stable, to the crude corner that pretends to be a blacksmith shop. It is more a collection of battered tools and half broken benches than a real forge. The anvil is small, uneven, pitted from years of blows. The hammer feels heavy as judgment in your hand. You fetch a box of horseshoes. They are never quite the right size, always scavenged from some earlier animal. There is no luxury of made to measure. You sort through them quickly, matching one to Old Blue's hoof by sight and by touch. The fit is always close enough, never perfect. The master's voice still echoes in your mind. Just make do. What are you complaining for? You have hands, do you not? You have hands, yes, but some of your fingers no longer straighten all the way. The nails, thick and blunt, glint in the weak light. You line them up on the bench, counting them out, though you do not need to. Your fingers know the right number by feel. The hammer comes down, the shoe bends, and you think about nothing but the rhythm. Hit, turn, measure, hit again. If you let your mind wander, you will pay for it with blood. You learned that lesson the first season, and the scar across your thumb is a daily reminder. Old Blue watches you, shifting his weight, impatient. He trusts you as much as any horse ever trusts a man, which is to say, just enough not to kick unless you give him a reason. You approach, speak softly, and lift his foot. It is heavy, and you brace it against your knee, ignoring the tremble in your arms. You scrape away the mud, check for stones, brush the soft sole clean. Then you press the shoe to the hoof, lining it up as best you can. The fit is rough, but it will have to do. You hold the nail, aim it at the white rim, and tap it gently, just enough to set it. Then you raise the hammer and drive it in. The first strike is always the worst. You listen for the sound, the dull thunk of wood, the sharp ring of metal, the quick, hollow note that tells you the nail is true. If it is not, if you miss by even a hair, the nail will punch through the sensitive part, and Old Blue will rear up, the world exploding in hooves and pain. You remember every time you missed, every time the nail slipped and pierced your palm instead, or worse, the soft part of the horse's hoof. Each mistake cost you, sometimes in blood, sometimes in blows, always in shame. You still have the scars, lines and dots, some white, some pink, some deep enough to ache in cold weather. You learned to work quickly, but not too quickly. You learned to take the pain quietly, because a man who cries out is a man who draws attention, and attention on a plantation is never a blessing. You hammer the rest of the nails, bending each one over with the back of the hammer, tucking the sharp ones away so they do not catch on stones or wood. Old Blue shifts, testing the shoe, and you let out a slow breath. This time, you have done it right. You repeat this for every horse that needs it. Some days it is only one or two. Some days it is every animal in the stable, each one with its own problems, its own quirks. The young horses are skittish, pulling away, dancing on their new legs. The old ones are stubborn, planting their hooves like trees, refusing to budge even as you beg and plead. There are times when your fingers go numb from gripping the hammer, when your eyes blur from the strain, when you cannot remember what it is to work without pain. You do not dare to show fatigue. The master expects speed and perfection, two things that are enemies in the forge. If you slip, if you miss, if you leave a nail prude or a shoe loose, there will be a reckoning. Sometimes it is just a tongue lashing. Sometimes it is the sting of the whip. Sometimes it is the loss of supper, which on this farm is as close as a man can get to dying without actually being buried. You have seen what happens when a shoe goes bad. Once the gray mare's shoe twisted, and she stumbled in the field, slicing her leg on a hidden rock. The blood was everywhere, on the straw, on your hands, on your shirt. You spent 3 days with her, cleaning the wound, packing it with rags, watching her flinch at every touch. The master blamed you, of course, even though you warned him the shoes were worn thin, that the mare needed rest. He called you careless, lazy, and for good measure, ignorant. You nodded, apologized, took your punishment. The mare healed, your back did not. There is always blood in this work. Sometimes it is the horse's, sometimes it is yours. You hide your wounds, binding your fingers with bits of cloth, tucking them into your pockets so no one will see. Infection is a constant threat. You watch your cuts for the telltale red line, the swelling, the heat. If it comes, there is little you can do but hope and keep working. No one cares if a groom loses a finger, so long as the horses are shod, the world keeps turning. At the end of the day, your hands are raw, your arms trembling, your shirt stained with sweat and blood. You wash your tools as best you can, set them back on the bench, count the nails one last time. You flex your fingers, wincing at the pain, and know that tomorrow will bring more of the same. As you walk away, the horses test their new shoes, stomping and whinnying. The master will never notice, not unless something goes wrong. In this world, silence is the only praise you get. You do not remember when your hands stopped healing, when the cuts stopped closing cleanly, when every new scar simply joined the old ones like a family reunion. The others call you lucky because you get to work with horses, because you are not out in the cotton fields. You do not bother to correct them. Everyone is lucky until the hammer slips. You look down at your hands, scarred and swollen, and you laugh softly under your breath. In this place, it is the only thing that is truly yours. It would be a small mercy if the work ended with shoeing and feeding. But there are the master's favorites, the purebred stallion, the dainty chestnut mare, the 2-year-old filly, worth more in silver than all the slaves in the quarters combined. These are not just horses, at least not to the master. They are status, pride, a way to show off to the neighbors and the overseers. Which means for you, their care is both a privilege and a constant threat. The master's prized horses are set apart from the rest, given stalls at the end of the stable where the windows actually have glass panes and the doors shut tight against the wind. Here the straw is replaced more often. The buckets are scrubbed until they shine. When you step into this part of the stable, you are entering a world where everything must be perfect. Not good enough, not almost, but flawless. You have a routine, one drilled into you by punishment and repetition. First, you take the soft bristled brush, the one reserved for the fine hides of the prize horses. The bristles are worn down to nubs, but it is still gentler than anything you use on the regular stock. You brush in long, careful strokes from neck to flank, always the same direction, never too hard. You know exactly how much pressure each horse will tolerate before the ears flick back in warning or the skin twitches in annoyance. Grooming is not just about removing mud or loose hair. It is about making sure every inch of their coat shines, that there is no trace of a scar or a scrape, that the master's eye finds nothing to complain about. You check for swelling in the legs, run your hand over joints and tendons, look for any sign of lameness or injury. Any flaw, no matter how small, is a personal insult to the master and thus a direct threat to your back. The chestnut mare, especially, is nervous. She tosses her head when you approach, white rimmed eyes rolling. You move slowly, whispering nonsense to her, hoping to keep her calm. If she spooks and kicks, the blame will be yours, no matter what set her off. You have learned to keep your body turned just so, always a fraction of a second away from dodging a hoof or a bite. Once the coats are gleaming, you turn to the manes and tails. The filly's mane tangles if you look at it wrong, and you work your fingers gently through each knot, pulling, coaxing, never tearing. You use a wooden comb, teeth smoothed by years of patient untangling, and pray the hair does not break. The master wants every mane to hang straight, every tail to flow like a curtain of silk. If there is a single burr or clump of mud, it is your fault, your punishment. Bathing the horses is reserved for the warmest days, but even in cool weather, you are expected to wipe them down with damp cloths. The water chills your hands to the bone, soaking through your sleeves, but you grit your teeth and keep at it. You wipe away sweat, dust, dried patches of lather. The horses shiver, stamping their feet, but you cannot stop. The job must be done. Sometimes the master or his guests will come to watch, standing in the doorway with their boots clean and their hands warm, offering helpful advice or idle threats. Mind that patch behind the shoulder, the master says, as if you could ever forget. Be sure you get the mud from the fetlocks, his son adds, grinning at you over the stall door. You keep your head down, voice low, never meeting their eyes. You are not meant to be seen here. Only the shine on the horse's flank matters. There are other rituals, too, special treatments for special animals. You oil the hooves with a mixture of grease and ash, rub liniment into tired muscles, check the teeth for sharp edges. If the master is expecting visitors, you braid the manes, polish the bridles until your fingers ache, and drape the finest saddle cloths over the rails for inspection. Every detail must be perfect, because a single misstep means humiliation, not for the master, but for you. and the consequences are always worse with these horses. If a field horse is dirty, you get shouted at. If a prize horse so much as looks ruffled, there is a switch waiting for you, or worse. The memory of the last time you missed a patch of dried sweat on the stallion's belly is still vivid. The slap across your face, the promise of worse to come if it happened again. A man who cannot keep a horse clean is not fit to be called a man at all, the master had said. You had bit your tongue so hard it bled, nodding and whispering, "Yes, sir," over and over until the taste of blood was gone. You think, as you work, about how strange it is that one animal's comfort is worth more than another's pain. You are here to make the horses shine, to make the master look good, to erase every hint of effort from the final result. Your own hands crack and bleed from the soap and the cold, but you hide them in your pockets when anyone might see. The afternoon light slants in through the window, glinting off the polished coats and the spotless tack. You step back, surveying your work, and for a moment there is a twisted sense of pride, a small satisfaction in knowing you have survived another day without a mistake. But it is fleeting, gone as quickly as it came, replaced by the familiar knot of anxiety. What if you missed something? What if, when the master comes to check, there is a single speck of dust, a hair out of place? You stand by the door, shoulders hunched, waiting for judgment. You listen for the master's footsteps, your heart pounding in your chest. This is not care, not really. It is a performance, a kind of torture dressed up as duty. The horses are beautiful, sleek, and calm, but you are just the shadow behind them, the invisible labor that makes the illusion possible. When the master finally comes, his eyes flick over the horses, pausing here and there, searching for fault. He nods, almost imperceptibly, then turns and leaves without a word. You let out a breath you did not know you were holding, and for a moment you are grateful, not for praise, but for the absence of pain. You gather your brushes, your rags, your combs, and move on to the next chore, already forgotten. The horses toss their heads, content and oblivious, and you wish, just once, that you could trade places with them, if only for a day. But that is not your lot. Your life is not measured in moments of comfort, but in how long you can go without a mistake. And as you close the stall doors behind you, you know, tomorrow, the torture will begin again. There are days when you almost convince yourself that you can adapt to this life, that if you just keep moving, keep your head down, keep your hands busy, you might be able to bear it. Then the weather changes and you remember the world itself is your enemy, and it always finds new ways to make you suffer. Rain, at first, comes as a relief, cooling the dusty yard, dampening the smell of manure, silencing the overseer's voice for a few blessed moments as everyone runs for cover. But the relief never lasts. The first hard rain of the season turns the stable yard into a soup of mud, manure, and misery. The ground beneath your feet becomes slick, sucking at your boots with every step, threatening to swallow you whole if you are not careful. The path you know by heart in the dry is now a trap, and every step risks a twisted ankle or a fall that will cost you more than just dignity. The rain finds its way into everything. The roof of the stable, patched and repatched with whatever scraps are at hand, always leaks in new places. You learn to read the drips, where they fall, how they collect, which stalls need an extra mound of straw, which corners will flood before midday. Some nights you lie awake, listening to the slow, insistent drip, knowing that in the morning you will find ruined feed, sodden bedding, and horses shivering in the damp. Your clothes are never truly dry. Even when you strip them off at night and drape them over the end of your bunk, they are still heavy and clammy by morning. The cold works its way into your bones, stiffening your fingers and toes, making every chore slower and more dangerous. You are expected to work faster, of course. Rain or shine, the horses must be fed, watered, and cleaned, the stalls mucked out, the tack oiled and hung up. If you slip and fall, you are told to get up. If you cough, you are told to stop wasting time. If you shiver, you are told to work harder. Worse still is the mud. It clings to everything: your boots, your hands, your tools. It cakes the horse's legs, dries into thick, itchy clumps that can cause sores if not carefully cleaned away. The master does not care that the mud makes the job twice as hard. He expects every horse to be spotless, every stall to be dry, every piece of tack to gleam. You scrub and scrub, knowing that by afternoon it will all be filthy again. Then there is the heat. When summer comes, the world transforms into a furnace. The stable, once a refuge from the wind and rain, becomes an oven. The air is thick, hard to breathe, heavy with the stink of sweat and manure. The horses stand with heads low, sides heaving, flanks dark with sweat. You haul water from the well in buckets that seem to grow heavier so the hour, your shirt sticking to your back, your head spinning from the effort. There are flies everywhere, clouds of them, black and buzzing, landing on your arms, your face, your food. You wave them away, slap at them, curse under your breath, but there is no escape. The horses stomp and shudder, their tails lashing, their patience short. Some days, the flies are so thick that you cannot open your mouth without swallowing them. You wonder if even the master could stand it, if he were forced to spend a single hour in this hell. But you know better. The master stays indoors, where it is cool and shaded, and only comes to the stables when he wants to show off to his friends. In the hottest months, you learn to watch for signs of sickness on yourself and on the horses. The animals can founder in the heat, their legs swelling, their breathing growing shallow. You try to keep them cool, but there is only so much you can do. The master blames you, of course, if anything goes wrong. It is your job, he says, to keep them fit. What do I pay you for? The answer, which you never dare to speak, is nothing. Winter, though, is the worst. The cold is merciless, settling into your bones, turning every breath into a knife. Water buckets freeze solid overnight, and you break the ice with numb fingers, your skin splitting, the blood freezing almost before it wells up. You have learned to breathe shallowly, to keep your hands moving, to layer rags under your shirt and tie your shoes tighter, but it never helps. The wind finds every hole in the walls, every gap in the boards, and whistles through the stable with a shriek that makes your teeth ache. In winter, the horses' coats grow thick, but even they shiver if you do not pile the straw high enough, if you do not check the doors and windows for drafts. You sleep less, rise earlier, work harder, and for what? A bowl of cold mush, a slap on the back, the privilege of being blamed when a horse comes up lame after a night on frozen ground. You think sometimes that the weather is the only thing truly honest in this place. The master lies, the overseer threatens, the world of men is full of false promises and broken hopes. But the weather is always exactly what it is: cruel, indifferent, relentless. It does not care if you are tired or hungry or afraid. It simply is. There are small moments when the first warm breeze of spring melts the last of the frost, or when the rain finally stops after days of pounding the roof, when you allow yourself to hope that things might get easier. But it never lasts. The mud returns, the heat grows, the cold comes back. The cycle repeats, and you are caught in it, unable to escape. Some days, when the wind is just right, you imagine you can smell the river far beyond the fields, or catch a glimpse of blue sky through the cracks in the stable roof. You close your eyes just for a moment and pretend you are somewhere else, anywhere else, where the weather is kind, where the world is gentle, where your hands are warm and your back does not ache. But the moment always ends. The rain returns, or the sun beats down, or the cold bites deeper. You open your eyes and see the stables, the mud, the misery, and you remember the weather here is not just a part of life. It is a reminder that the world, like your master, is never on your side. You pick up your pitchfork, wrap your coat tighter around your shoulders, and step back into the storm. There is work to do, and the weather does not care if you are ready. It is a strange thing, but you never really work alone. Even if the world feels like it belongs to the master, and every shadow in the stable seems determined to press you into the mud, you have helpers. The term is generous, of course. These are not trusted apprentices, not sons eager to learn a father's trade. They are the young, the overlooked, the half grown and half starved children of the quarters, and, whether you like it or not, the rats. The first kind of helper, the boys and sometimes girls from the slave cabins, are assigned to you by the overseer, who believes that all labor should be multiplied, like pain and corn. Most mornings, a cluster of skinny bodies appears at the door, blinking in the early light, shivering in shirts far too thin for the season. Their eyes are wary, always watching for danger or disappointment. Some are quick learners, desperate to please, because a word of praise or a little less shouting can make all the difference in a world where childhood is only a rumor. Others drag their feet, dreaming of the day they might be put to easier work, like gathering eggs or minding the smaller children. But today, they are yours. You put the youngest to the simplest tasks, sweeping the aisles, filling the feed buckets, fetching water. Their arms are too short, their legs too weak for heavy lifting. They tip over the pails, spill more grain than they save, and sometimes stare at the horses with a mixture of awe and fear, as if the animals might suddenly remember that they are wild. You remember that feeling. The first time a horse bared its teeth at you, the first time a hoof missed your face by a hair. You learned to respect them and to move quickly. You try to teach the same to the children, but their minds are elsewhere, full of stories and nightmares. They chatter when they think you are not listening, voices barely above a whisper. They talk of stolen apples, of songs their mothers sang, of ghosts in the fields, of the time the overseer's dog bit old Jeremiah and he laughed, said he'd had worse from a mule. You do not join in. You are not a child, not anymore. Still, you listen, because their words are sometimes the only laughter you hear in a day. You keep a careful eye on them, not just for their sake, but for your own. If a child gets hurt, you will be blamed. If a tool goes missing, it is your fault. If a horse shies or a bucket is left out of place, you answer for it. So you become a shepherd as much as a groom, herding your charges through the maze of chores, nudging them away from danger, pretending not to see when they pocket a bit of grain or share a crust of bread behind the hay bales. Sometimes you remember what it was to be hungry and afraid, and you let them have their secrets. Then there are the rats. You wish you could say they are just pests, but in truth they are your constant, if unwelcome, companions. They appear at dusk and dawn, slipping through cracks in the floor, eyes shining in the shadows, tails flicking as they scurry from stall to stall. You have learned to respect their cunning, their persistence. Sometimes, it seems, the rats know more about survival than any of the people on the plantation. You compete with the rats for almost everything. They are quicker than you, finding every crumb of grain, every scrap of discarded food, every hole in the wall where warmth or shelter can be found. You set traps, block holes with stones and broken boards, but the rats always find a way around. More than once, you have woken in the night to find one curled beside you, drawn by your body heat, or gnawing at your boots for a taste of salt. It is an indignity so complete that you almost laugh, but there is nothing funny about sharing your life with vermin. The children are terrified of the rats, shrieking or climbing onto feed barrels when one runs across the floor. You are past fear now, mostly. Instead, you are angry, resentful that in the endless struggle for survival, you are losing to creatures half your size and twice as clever. Sometimes you think the rats are the real masters here, taking what they want, living without rules or punishments. But you also learn from them. You watch how they move, how they find what is hidden, how they take risks and work together, at least when there is something to be gained. You begin to see the world through their eyes, a map of opportunity and danger, a place where every moment is a choice between hunger and pain. There is a lesson in it, though you would never admit it to anyone. There are other kinds of helpers too, though they are not always welcome. The master's sons, when they are feeling charitable or bored, sometimes wander down to the stables, demanding to help with grooming or feeding. Their help means more work for you, more mess to clean, more explanations to give when something goes wrong. You endure their questions, their laughter, their clumsy hands, because you have no choice. And then there are the overseers, who help in their own way, mostly by reminding everyone that no one is ever working hard enough, fast enough, quietly enough. Their boots are loud, their words louder, and their eyes are everywhere. You learn to work with your back to the wall, to keep your mouth shut, to nod and say, "Yes, sir," when they offer advice that is nothing but threats wrapped in words. At the end of the day, when the sun is gone and the stable is quiet, you sometimes sit on the threshold and watch the rats go about their business. The children have long since run home, laughing or crying or silent, their day done. The overseer's voice is a memory. The master's demands a distant thunder. For a moment, you are just a man among animals, some tame, some wild, all doing what they must to survive. You close your eyes, listening to the rustle of straw, the scurrying of small feet, the deep, even breathing of the horses in their stalls. In that moment, you almost feel a kind of peace, strange, uneasy, fragile. You are not alone, not really. The world is full of helpers, even if none of them are your friends. But the peace does not last. The night is cold, and the rats are hungry, and tomorrow will come too soon. When a horse coughs or stumbles, the world narrows to a razor's edge. A healthy horse is already a weight on your shoulders, but a sick one is an anvil dropped from a height, smashing any hope of an easy day. The others might say you are lucky, spared the back-breaking field work, but luck is a strange thing on the plantation. Here, it means you are the first to blame and the last to forgive yourself. It usually starts with something small. Maybe you notice one of the colts drooping his head, not bothering to nuzzle the feed bucket, or the old mare standing strangely in her stall, a line of sweat down her flank even though the air is cold. Sometimes it is just a change in breathing, a strange hollow cough echoing through the night when the world is otherwise silent. You learn over the years to spot these signs faster than most men spot trouble in their own homes. Trouble is your house guest. It never leaves. The moment you notice a sick horse, your mind begins to race. You review every recent meal, every walk, every errand run, wondering if you missed something or made some fatal mistake. Did you leave the stall too damp? Was the water bucket too close to the wall, catching the runoff from the leaky roof? Was there a sharp edge or a moldy patch of hay you failed to spot in your morning inspection? Sometimes you think you can feel the master's eyes on the back of your neck even when you are alone, accusing you, daring you to explain yourself. You know better than to go running for help straight away. There is a hierarchy of panic on the plantation. If you wake the master for a case of nerves, you will be whipped for wasting his time. If you wait too long, and the horse worsens, you will be whipped for neglect. Your life becomes a balancing act. Too soon, and you are a fool. Too late, and you are a criminal. Either way, you are the one who pays. You do what you can with what you have. You check the horse's temperature the way you were taught, your hand pressed to its nose, your fingers along its side, watching for heat, for tremors, for signs that something inside is burning up or shutting down. You run through your mental list of home remedies, none of which work more than half the time. A poultice made from wild onions for swelling, a rag soaked in cold water for fever. Old Samuel once taught you to burn dried sage and let the horse breathe in the smoke, swearing it would drive out the illness. It worked once, or seemed to, and now you do it out of habit, out of desperation. The children who help you, usually so eager, become silent and watchful. They sense the tension, the way you move more quickly, the way your voice lowers when you talk to the horses. They fetch what you need without asking, eyes darting from you to the animal and back again. Even the rats seem to sense when something is wrong, disappearing into the shadows until the trouble has passed, or not. You try to hide the sick horses from the master for as long as you can. You brush extra hard, hoping to give the illusion of health, speak softly to keep them calm. But you cannot hide a horse forever, and sooner or later the master comes through, trailing the overseer behind him like a shadow. The inspection is different now, his eyes sharper, his questions less lazy, more pointed. What is wrong with this one? He asks, and you have already rehearsed your answer. A little tired, sir. Nothing serious. He will be right as rain tomorrow, sir. The master is rarely convinced. Sometimes he calls for the veterinarian, a white man from the nearest town, with clean boots and soft hands. He arrives in a cloud of tobacco smoke, pinches and prods, nods wisely, prescribes a mixture you do not have and could never afford. When he leaves, the master is angrier than before, as if the price of a few bottles and powders has come from his own blood. You are given strict instructions, most of them impossible, and sent back to watch, to wait, to hope. When there is no vet, or when the master cannot be bothered, you do what you can. You stay up late, watching over the sick horse, listening to every breath, counting the seconds between coughs. The others call you foolish for caring so much, but you cannot help it. You remember every horse you have lost, every look on the master's face, every wordless accusation. You remember, too, the way the horses trust you, the way they lean into your touch, their bodies trembling, eyes wide with pain or fear. If the horse recovers, the master may reward you with a grudging nod, a muttered, "Good enough." More likely, he will forget you entirely, moving on to the next crisis, the next demand. If the horse dies, there is a reckoning. The body is dragged from the stable, dumped in a pit, or burned in the field. The master curses, the overseer shouts, and you receive whatever punishment they think you deserve, usually more than you can bear, always more than you earned. There is a special kind of loneliness in those nights spent with sick animals. You sit in the straw, the lantern guttering on a nail above your head, the only sound the labored breathing of the horse at your feet. You talk to the animal, words soft and meaningless, meant as much for yourself as for it. You promise things you cannot deliver, that tomorrow will be better, that the pain will pass, that you will all get through this. You do not believe it, not really, but saying it helps. You learn to measure time by suffering, theirs and yours. Some nights you think about how strange it is that the master can sleep through it all, never waking, never worrying, while you sit and wait for the dawn, praying for another day with the same old troubles instead of new ones. If you are lucky, the horse recovers. If not, you do what you must. Bury the body, clean the stall, scrub away every trace, and move on. The world keeps turning. The chores do not stop. The master is never satisfied. And all the while, the next cough, the next stumble, the next fever is waiting somewhere just beyond the reach of your care. And when it comes, you will be ready because you have no other choice. There are whispers among the others in the quarters about holidays, about days when the work slows, when the overseer's voice grows softer, when you might be allowed a moment to sit, to breathe, to pretend you are something more than a body with a list of chores. But these whispers are for other people. For you, the stable never closes, not for Christmas, not for Easter, not for the Master's birthday, not for any reason a preacher might think holy. Horses do not know the meaning of a holiday, and the Master says neither should you. On the rarest of mornings, perhaps once or twice in a year, someone brings news that today is special. Christmas, they say, or the 4th of July. The fields might be still, the kitchen quieter. Some families dress in their best, pieced together clothes, and gather under the old trees to sing or pray, their voices a thin thread of hope against the vast emptiness of the plantation. The children might play at freedom, running wild for an hour or two before the overseer remembers himself. You see them, sometimes, from the stable door, little ones spinning in circles, women swaying and humming, men standing with arms folded, trying to pretend they are not just waiting for the day to end. Sometimes you hear laughter, a real, sharp sound that almost hurts your ears after so much silence. You try not to watch. It is a luxury you cannot afford. Inside the stable, the work is the same as always. There are horses to feed, stalls to muck, wounds to dress, gear to polish, water to carry. You go about your business in the half light, your steps echoing off the walls, the rhythm of your chores unchanged by any calendar. If anything, the work is harder on holidays because you do the chores alone. The young helpers are kept at home, their parents clutching them close, wanting to believe for a few hours that the world is less cruel than it is. The master likes to parade his horses on holidays, showing off for the neighbors, riding out in his best coat while the guests clap and call out praise. That means you must prepare everything: Groom the stallion until his coat shines like polished wood. Braid the filly's mane with ribbons stolen from the mistress's old dresses. Scrub the tack until your arms tremble. It is not a day of rest. It is a day of scrutiny. Everything must be perfect because today, of all days, there are extra eyes watching, extra mouths ready to report every flaw, every speck of dirt. You do your work in silence, listening to the distant sound of singing, the laughter drifting across the yard. You feel it, sharp and sour, a reminder that you are always apart, always on the outside looking in. The horses do not care, of course. They nicker for their feed, stomp for attention, roll in the fresh straw, just as they do every day of the year. You wonder sometimes if they know the difference, if they feel the edge of the day as you do, a sharpness in the air, a longing for something that will never arrive. There are other holidays too, though the master does not celebrate them. The children speak of John Kanu, a festival from the islands, and you have seen, once or twice, a masked figure dancing in the moonlight at the far edge of the fields. You hear snatches of song in a language you do not know, laughter that sounds like weeping, stories passed from mouth to ear, changing shape with every telling. These are not your holidays, but you cling to them all the same. They are proof that life existed before the plantation and might, in some other world, exist after. Your own celebrations, if you can call them that, are private and fleeting. A stolen minute to sit on the stable threshold, watching the sun set behind the trees. A shared piece of bread, a quiet word with another groom, a moment when no one is shouting and the world feels almost still. You have learned not to expect more. Hope, like everything else here, is rationed. There is no feast for you, no special food or drink. The master's table is piled high with roast and sweet things, the kitchen thick with the smell of butter and sugar, but you scrape your breakfast from the same battered bowl, the taste unchanged by the season. If you are lucky, one of the cooks will sneak you a crust, a spoonful of gravy, a bruised apple. You eat it quickly, eyes darting to be sure no one sees. Even kindness is dangerous here. At night, when the celebration is over, you return to the quarters. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and sweat, the sound of snoring, the soft rustle of bodies settling in for a night that will end too soon. Sometimes someone tries to sing a hymn, their voice breaking in the darkness. You close your eyes and listen, letting the music wash over you. For a moment, you imagine you are somewhere else, a place where rest is not a sin, where work can pause, where holidays are more than a word. But the moment passes, morning comes early, and the stable will not wait for you. The horses do not care for human customs, and the master cares even less. You wake, as always, in the cold and the dark, your hands already reaching for the tools of your trade, your mind already counting the chores ahead. On the plantation, every day is the same. Some are just lonelier than others. You wake up tired, as always. Sometimes you think it is a trick of the mind, that the day will get better once you are up and moving, once your muscles have shaken off the night's stiffness. But the truth is, the tiredness does not leave. It sinks deeper with every day, burrowing into your bones until you forget what it ever felt like to be rested. You wonder sometimes if you were born tired, if you came into the world already waiting for a chance to sleep. In the stable, fatigue follows you like a shadow, silent and ever present. It shapes your world, turning every task into a test of endurance, every chore into a small mountain to climb. Your arms feel heavy, your legs drag, your head pounds with the dull ache that never quite disappears. The others talk about sleep as if it is a place, a country they might visit if only they had a ticket. But you know the border is closed to you. Your hands tremble when you pick up the pitchfork, the muscles in your forearms screaming for rest before the day has even begun. Your back aches in a way that no stretch or twist can fix. When you roll your shoulders, you hear the quiet pop of overworked joints, a dull reminder that you are both young and old at the same time. You have watched men twice your age do less work with more grace, and boys half your size run until they drop. But you, the lucky, stable hand, never know relief. You work by habit, by memory, by necessity. There is a kind of dull pride in knowing you can do the chores half asleep, in the dark, blindfolded, with your mind drifting far away. You measure oats and hay by the feel of them in your hands. You count nails for shoeing by the scrape of metal on wood. You lead the horses with a touch that is steady, even when your vision blurs from lack of sleep. Every so often, a new overseer will wander through, noticing the dark circles under your eyes, the slump in your posture. Lazy, he might mutter, or slow. You do not answer, because nothing you say will change his mind. He does not know or care that you have been up since long before the sun, that you spent the night with a sick horse, that your sleep is interrupted by every groan of the wind or thump of hooves. To him, tiredness is a sin, and you are always guilty. The master is even less sympathetic. He expects you to be invisible, tireless, a shadow moving from chore to chore with silent efficiency. If you move too slowly, you are punished. If you stumble, you are punished. If you finish the work too quickly, you are given more. There is no way to win, no way to rest. Food does not help. There is never enough to fill you up, never enough to rebuild the stores of energy burned away in the day's labor. Breakfast is a memory by midday, and by dusk, your stomach is a hollow ache. Sometimes you imagine yourself floating, drifting above the stable, untethered by hunger or exhaustion. But the day always drags you back down. You watch the horses as they doze in the afternoon sun, their bodies relaxed, muscles rippling in slow waves under their coats. You envy them, their rest, their freedom from thought, the way they can collapse into sleep at a moment's notice and wake refreshed. You wonder what it would be like to live a life measured in naps and meals, to know that your needs will always be met, that your suffering will always have an end. The other slaves talk about dreams, about the world beyond the plantation, about running away to a place where tiredness is not a constant companion. You listen, but you do not join in. You have forgotten how to dream. Your nights are filled with restless tossing, with aches and chills, with the endless list of chores that waits for you at dawn. Even your dreams are just more work. Sometimes you think about collapsing right there in the stable, in the mud, in the middle of your chores. You imagine what it would feel like to let your body finally give in, to stop fighting the fatigue for just 1 minute. But you never do. You keep moving, keep working, because you know the price of weakness. You have seen what happens to those who cannot keep up. You find small ways to rest, moments stolen between jobs. Leaning against a stall door for a heartbeat, letting your eyes close while you wait for the feed to soak, sitting on a bale of hay while you untangle a rope. These moments are brief, and you always listen for footsteps, for the sharp bark of the overseer, for the master's impatient call. Even rest is something to be hidden, a guilty pleasure in a world that punishes comfort. Your only true companion is fatigue. It is always there, waiting for you in the morning, following you through every hour, curling up beside you at night. You wonder sometimes if you will ever be free of it, if there is a world where you can lay your head down without fear, without pain, without the promise of another day just like this one. But hope is as dangerous as rest. You bury it deep beneath the layers of exhaustion and focus on the work. The horses need feeding, the stalls need cleaning, the master needs his world to keep turning. You keep moving because stopping is not allowed. If you ever begin to forget that this place can get worse, the world is always quick to remind you. Here, danger does not wear a mask. It comes straight at you, hooves first or fists first, sometimes both at once. Some days, the horses are your only company. Other days, the master's friends, or the field hands, or even the overseer's own kin come down to the stable looking for distraction, for entertainment, for something to break. Horses are dangerous by their nature. You learn that before you can even tie your own shoes. A startled gelding can lash out in a flash, leaving bruises that bloom purple and yellow up your shins and thighs. A nervous mare will bite your shoulder so hard you think she has taken a piece of you with her. The yearlings, too young to know better and too wild to care, might pin you against the stall door, kicking at shadows, bucking for the sheer joy of it. You move through the stable with a caution that is part skill, part fear, and part luck. The horses do not want to hurt you, but sometimes they do not know how not to. You can never let your guard down. Even the old, sleepy draft horse can kill you if you stand in the wrong place at the wrong time. You carry the scars of every lesson, the split eyebrow from a flailing hoof, the half-moon bite mark that never quite faded, the ridge of scar tissue where your hand got crushed between a fence post and a panicked colt. Each one is a memory and a warning. You keep your voice calm, your movements slow, your hands where the horses can see them. Still, You are always one heartbeat away from pain. The master's horses are the worst. They are bred for speed, for power, for beauty, not for kindness or patience. They are fed better than you, treated better than you, but trained to respond to the whip and the bit. You groom them, feed them, care for them, but they know you are not their master. Sometimes you catch a look in their eyes, a wildness, a reminder that their hearts are too big for the stalls they live in. You know better than to turn your back. Yet it is not the animals that make you most afraid. It is the people, especially on those days when the master has visitors, men with too much liquor and not enough sense, who wander down to the stable to show off, to ride, to prove they are brave, or just to remind themselves that they can. They swagger and laugh, boots tracking mud and spit across the stable floor, voices booming in the small space. Boy, one of them says, snapping his fingers at you, bring me the black mare, the pretty one. You know which horse he means. You also know she does not like strangers, especially ones who smell of whiskey and anger. You try to warn him softly, carefully, but he is not listening. He takes the reins from your hands, swings himself up, and the mare's eyes go wide. It happens quickly. A sharp buck, a twisting leap, and the man tumbles hard to the ground. He curses, his friends laugh, and then he rounds on you. This is your fault, he spits, voice thick with rage. You did something to her. There is no use arguing, no sense in explaining that horses are not machines, that they remember rough hands and harsh words, that fear is passed from man to beast and back again. You nod, apologize, bow your head. Sometimes that is enough, sometimes it is not. Sometimes the punishment is just words. Sometimes it is a backhand across the face or a boot to the ribs. Sometimes it is a day without food, a night in the cold. The worst is when the overseer gets involved. He likes to show he is in charge, especially in front of guests. His punishments are quieter, meaner, meant to leave marks you cannot hide but must never show. Even the other slaves can be a threat. Jealousy, desperation, boredom, all these things fester in the quarters and spill over into the stable. You have had tools stolen, food taken, the horses blamed for things you did not do. You have learned to keep your head down, your mouth shut, your possessions close. You trust only what you can see, and sometimes not even that. There are days when the violence feels almost random, as if the world itself has decided you are too comfortable, too alive, and must be reminded of your place. A stray kick, a thrown stone, a sudden slap, a word whispered in the master's ear. The stable is full of sharp corners and blind spots, places where anything can happen, and no one will help you if it does. You develop a sixth sense for trouble. You can hear it in the laughter of the master's sons. See it in the way a horse flicks its ears or a guest lingers too long by the stall doors. You learn to predict when a storm is coming, not the kind that brings rain, but the kind that leaves bruises and broken ribs. You do what you can to protect yourself. You stay busy, invisible, useful. You try to keep the horses calm, the guests entertained, the overseers satisfied. Some days it works, some days nothing works. Danger, you realize, is not just part of the job, it is the job. You wonder sometimes if there will ever be a day when you do not have to flinch, when you do not have to brace for the next blow, the next outburst, the next accident. But hope is for other people. Here you measure your safety in moments and luck is just another word for someone else's mistake. The day ends, the visitors leave, the stable grows quiet again. You tend to your wounds, visible and invisible, and prepare for the next round. Tomorrow, the horses and the humans will be just as dangerous as today. You are never allowed to forget it. If you want to survive in the stable, you must master the art of fear. Not just your own fear, though that is with you every moment, an ache in your stomach, a flutter in your chest, but the fear of being seen, being heard, being noticed. You learn over years that the safest way to live is to say nothing, to let your thoughts dissolve on your tongue before they ever become words. It is not that you have nothing to say. Your mind is full, bursting with complaints, with questions, with memories that do not belong to this place, stories your mother whispered to you before she was sold, a joke you heard once that almost made you laugh, a wish for something softer than the endless grind of work and pain. But words are dangerous things here, sharper than a horse's kick, and they leave wounds that never heal. You watch the others, especially the new boys, the ones who have not learned yet. They speak out of turn, answer back, ask questions they should not ask. You see what happens. The overseer's patience is as thin as the stable door, and when it cracks, he comes down hard. A single word can earn a slap, a wrong look can bring a beating. You see the lessons take root, slowly, painfully, as the new ones fall silent, their eyes darkening, their voices shrinking to whispers. You become an expert in silence. You learn to move without drawing attention, to do your work quickly and well, to disappear into the background. When someone shouts your name, you answer with a yes, sir, eyes down, voice steady, never volunteering more than is required. You keep your face blank, your body loose, your hands busy. You never ask why, never suggest a better way, never correct the master, even when he is wrong, especially when he is wrong. Fear, you realize, is not just a feeling. It is a rule, a commandment, a silent agreement among everyone on the plantation. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not draw attention to yourself. Do not complain. Do not cry. Do not show weakness. If you must scream, do it into your pillow after the doors are shut when no one can hear you. Sometimes the silence is broken, not by you, but by someone else. You hear a whispered curse when a horse kicks over a bucket, a choked sob when the master's cane finds its mark, a song half sung before the overseer's footsteps end it. You listen, heart pounding, waiting for the punishment you know will follow. The world does not tolerate noise here. There are things you wish you could say. You want to warn the new ones about the dangerous horses, about the splintered board in the second stall, about the way the master's son likes to sneak up behind you and shout just to watch you jump. You want to tell someone that you have not slept in days, that your arm aches from where the stallion bit you, that you are hungry, always hungry, but the words die before they leave your lips. Sometimes you wonder what would happen if you broke the rules, if you shouted your anger, your pain, your exhaustion. You imagine a world where you could speak your mind, where your words had power, where you could complain about the cold, or the filth, or the endless, grinding unfairness of it all. But that world is not this one. Here, your voice belongs to someone else. You become adept at reading silences, too. You know when a pause means trouble, when a hush means the master is nearby, when the lack of laughter in the quarters means someone is missing or someone has been punished. Silence can be comforting, a shield against pain, but it can also be terrifying, a sign that something is wrong or about to be. There are times, rare but real, when you and another stable hand will meet each other's eyes across the hay bales, a whole conversation passing between you in a single glance. Are you hurt? Are you afraid? Did you hear about what happened last night? The answer is always yes, yes, yes. But the questions never become words. You keep your secrets close, your fears even closer. You do not tell anyone about the nightmare that woke you up, about the time you thought about running away, about the way your hands shake when the master comes near. You learn to hide everything because the less anyone knows about you, the safer you are. At night, lying in your bunk, you let your mind wander to safer places. Silent forests, empty fields, the hush of the river at dawn. Places where fear does not follow you, where your thoughts are your own, where no one is listening for the sound of your voice. You cling to these moments, hoarding them like treasures, because you know that come morning, the silence will return, heavier than ever. Fear and silence, these are the rules of survival. You follow them, not because you are weak, but because you are wise, because you have seen what happens to those who do not. Because in the end, silence is the only thing that cannot be taken from you. So you keep your mouth shut, your head down, your heart locked tight behind your ribs. You live for the quiet, because in the quiet, you are still alive. After a while, you become an expert at pretending. It is not just about hiding your fear, your hunger, or the ache in your bones. It is about hiding your eyes, your ears, your heart. The stable is full of things that are not supposed to be seen. Punishments delivered in the dark corners, a back hunched under blows, a cry stifled with a dirty rag, the overseer's shadow flickering in the lamplight. These things happen, and your job is to see them and then act as if you never did. You learn to look away. It is a kind of blindness you teach yourself, a second sight that lets you notice only what is safe to notice. You keep your eyes on your work, your hands moving, your face as empty as the sky before a storm. When you hear something, a muffled sob, the sharp snap of a whip, the thud of a body hitting the stable wall, you pause for a moment, just long enough to know it is happening, then keep on as if all is well. Sometimes the victim is someone you know, even someone you care about, but that changes nothing. If you react, you are next. This skill is not unique to you. Everyone on the plantation learns it, sooner or later. The children pick it up quickest, their wide eyes growing guarded, their chatter dying down, their small faces turning away from the world. The old ones have perfected it. They can sweep a whole yard, carry water, or mend a fence without ever looking up, without ever seeing what is right in front of them. It is not cowardice, it is survival. There are unwritten rules for this kind of pretending. When the overseer drags a boy out by the ear, you keep your head down. When the master's son shouts and throws a saddle at your feet, you flinch just enough to show respect, not so much that it looks like you noticed his anger. When you see fresh blood on the hay, you step over it, your mind already erasing the memory. You know better than to ask questions, better than to offer comfort. Even a gentle word can make things worse for you or for them. You do not gossip either. News travels fast enough without your help, and words have a way of turning on you, becoming accusations. A story whispered in the dark can bring trouble in the daylight. Sometimes, though, you hear stories anyway, passed in low voices over breakfast, hidden in songs, carried by a look or a gesture. You tuck these stories away, but you never let them show. The hardest part is pretending with your own pain. When you take a blow meant for a horse, when your fingers swell and bruise from a stall door slammed by the master, when you wake in the night with cramps in your belly and fire in your back, you do not complain. You get up, you work, you smile if you have to. You say, "Yes, sir," and "No, ma'am," and "Thank you kindly" when the occasion demands, never letting the true words slip out. You become so good at pretending that sometimes you almost believe it yourself. You almost convince yourself that Tony will be different, that the master will not notice the torn blanket, that the overseer will let you rest a minute longer, that the pain in your chest is just tiredness, nothing more. It is easier to believe in nothing than to believe in something you can never have. There is a ritual to it. You wake up each day and put on your mask. You perform your tasks as if you are invisible, as if nothing outside your small circle exists. You nod at the right moments, avoid eye contact, keep your tone soft and even. You become so skilled at this that you can even fool the other slaves sometimes. You make it through the day without incident, and that is a victory. But the cost is high. Each day, you lose a little more of yourself, a little more of your ability to feel. You become numb to suffering, not just your own, but everyone's. You know this is not how people are supposed to live, but you do it anyway, because the alternative is worse. Sometimes, at night, you remember things you have seen and forgotten, faces twisted in pain, the look in a horse's eye when the whip comes down, the sound of a friend's voice begging for mercy. These memories haunt you, but in the morning, You bury them again, deep enough that no one can find them. You have learned over time that pretending is not just a skill, but a shield. It keeps you safe, keeps you alive. It keeps the master's anger at bay, keeps the overseer's suspicion off your back. It allows you to survive in a world where survival is the only thing that matters. You watch as others learn the same lesson. The new ones struggle at first, crying, fighting, asking why, but eventually they too grow silent. Their eyes grow empty, their laughter fades. They become part of the stable, part of the unspoken agreement. Nothing happens here. Nothing ever happens. And so you keep pretending, you keep working, keep moving, keep your eyes open and your mouth shut. You tell yourself that one day, perhaps, you will not have to pretend anymore, that one day you can feel something again. But until then, you are the master of pretending nothing happens, and that is how you survive. Every day is the same: work, silence, fear, and more work. The routine is so rigid it feels like a prison, and you learn to carry your own keys. Even so, there are moments, small and rare, when something cracks in the gloom and a flicker of joy escapes. You learn not to seek them, because seeking is dangerous. Joy is not allowed here. But sometimes, almost by accident, you find it, or it finds you. You might steal a moment when no one is watching, kneeling in the straw beside a sleeping foal, running your hand over the soft, warm curve of its neck. The foal opens a lazy eye, breathes out a cloud of sweet, hay scented air, and you let yourself smile. Not too broadly, not for too long, just enough to remember you still can. There is something healing in the animals, especially the young ones. They do not know how the world works yet. They nuzzle your pockets for hidden treats, chew your shirt, try to climb into your lap when they are frightened by a thunderstorm. They trust you in ways the world does not. You speak to them in whispers, nonsense syllables, gentle sounds. You tell them things you dare not say to another person: how tired you are, how hungry, how you wish you could run as fast as they do. Their answers are simple: a soft nudge, a playful buck, a moment of unguarded affection. You take what you can get. Sometimes you sneak a word or two with another slave, a few minutes by the well, exchanging news, sharing a joke so old and worn it has become a family heirloom, a quick game of marbles with the youngest boys, or helping a girl braid her hair while she tells you about a dream she had, a dream where she flew over the whole plantation like a bird. These are dangerous luxuries. The overseer watches, always, looking for signs that you are not working, not suffering, not behaving as you should. You learn to make the most of your moments. You sing, very softly, under your breath, songs you remember from before, songs with words so old you do not know their meaning anymore. You tap rhythms on the stall doors, making a private music no one else can hear. You draw shapes in the dust with your finger: a bird, a horse, a name, and then wipe them away before anyone sees. Some of the women smuggle tiny bits of sweetness into the quarters, a bit of molasses, a fig, a piece of ginger root. When you are lucky, you get a taste. You let it melt on your tongue, closing your eyes, pretending for just a moment that you are somewhere else, someone else. It is a dangerous game, this pretending, but you play it anyway. For a minute or two, the world is not so heavy. You must always be careful, though. A smile at the wrong time can earn you a slap. Laughter carries, and too much of it invites suspicion. If the master or the overseer catches you with a scrap of bread not accounted for, a tool in your pocket, or a secret in your eyes, there is punishment, swift, public, and meant to be remembered. Even kindness can be dangerous. Once, you saw a young girl try to comfort her crying friend, and the overseer beat them both for wasting time. You learn to keep your happiness small, quiet, hidden. Sometimes, in the evening, you stand at the edge of the yard and watch the sunset. The sky turns a color so beautiful it hurts your eyes, red and gold and orange, a fire that does not burn. For a few precious moments, no one shouts, no one calls your name, no one expects you to move. You let the light wash over you, breathing it in as if it were food. You know it will not last. The night will come, bringing with it the cold, the rats, the nightmares, the aching hunger. But for those minutes, you allow yourself to exist. There are other kinds of stolen moments. Sometimes you watch two hands brush together, fingers touching in secret. Sometimes you hear a song, low and soft, drifting from the quarters late at night, a lullaby for a child who will wake to another day of work. Sometimes you find a flower growing wild beside the stable and tuck it behind your ear for a minute before hiding it under the water trough. You do not take it for granted. You do not ask for more. You know that joy is fleeting here. It is a candle in a hurricane, a laugh in a storm. You learn to savor it, to remember it when the world gets dark again. You do not speak of it, not even to the animals. You tuck it away inside yourself, a secret treasure. And when the day ends, when you finally crawl into your bunk and pull the scratchy blanket up to your chin, you remember the foal's breath, the taste of ginger, the color of the sky. You hold on to these things, clutching them tight against the oncoming night. Joy is not your right. It is not your reward. It is a crime, a rebellion, a fleeting miracle, but it is yours for as long as you dare to keep it. You live your life with hunger as a constant companion. It is not the kind of hunger you can laugh about at supper or cure with a secret snack. It is deeper, older, a gnawing pain that sits just beneath your ribs and never lets you forget who you are. The others feel it too. Some are better at hiding it, others are not. But on the plantation, hunger is the weather, and you are always underdressed. There is never enough food and never enough time to eat what little you have. In the morning, you scrape the bottom of the pot for cold mush, sometimes laced with a crust of yesterday's bread, if you are lucky. It sticks to your teeth and fills your belly only until your first chore, after which it seems to vanish as if you had never eaten at all. Lunch, when it comes, is a rumor, a quick bite of cornbread, a strip of salted meat if the master's wife is feeling generous or the pigs have died. Most days, you settle for nothing more than water and a fistful of dry grain, eaten with your back turned so the others cannot see your shame. The master's horses, of course, eat better than you. Their buckets are full, their oats clean and fresh, their treats sweetened with molasses or carrots from the kitchen garden. You feed them, brush them, care for them, and you feel your own stomach twist. You learn not to look at the food too long, not to breathe in too deeply when you are filling the troughs. Hunger sharpens your senses, but it also dulls your hope. Sometimes you try to steal a carrot here, an apple there, never enough to be noticed, never enough to satisfy. You have become an expert in the art of moving quietly, hiding things in your pocket, swallowing quickly before anyone catches you. The price for getting caught is high, a whipping or worse, a meal taken away for a week as a lesson. Still, the hunger is always stronger than fear, and you take the risk more times than you would ever admit. Sickness follows hunger as surely as the night follows day. You watch the others grow thin, their eyes sunken, their skin stretched tight over cheekbones and knuckles. Coughs become a constant background noise, a chorus of misery rising from the quarters at dawn and dusk. Fevers run through the cabins like wildfire, leaving some burning hot and others cold as stone. There is no medicine except what you can make from roots and leaves, no healing except the slow, stubborn way a body learns to survive or does not. You become an expert in symptoms. You know the difference between a cough that means dust and a cough that means something is dying inside. You can feel the heat of a fever without touching, recognize the sweet, rotting smell of an infected wound from across the stable. You know which pains to ignore and which ones to fear. When you get sick yourself, you do not stop working. There is no such thing as a sick day for you. You drag your body through the chores, sweat pouring down your back, chills running up your arms. If you are lucky, you can hide it. If you are unlucky, someone will notice, and then the work will only get harder, the punishment sharper, the chance for rest even more remote. You have seen men die standing, their last breath drawn while they held a pitchfork or a bucket, the world turning as if nothing had happened. The young are hit the hardest. You watch the children, their bellies swollen not from food, but from emptiness, their arms and legs thin as sticks. Some do not last the winter. They disappear quietly, carried away in the night, and buried in a shallow grave behind the quarters. There is no time for mourning, no ceremony, no grave markers. The only sign that they were ever here is an extra piece of bread at breakfast, a blanket left behind. The old ones, too, slip away. Their voices fade, their bodies shrink, and one day you realize you have not seen them in the yard, and you do not ask why. You learn not to count heads, not to speak the names of the missing. The world does not stop for grief. Sometimes, when you are scraping the mold from a bit of cheese or picking the weevils from a handful of flour, you wonder how long your body can keep going. You dream of food in your sleep: warm, fresh bread, sweet berries, a piece of meat so big it lasts all week. You wake with your mouth watering, your hands clenched in the straw, and the taste of nothing on your tongue. You envy the horses their health, their weight, their easy rest. You watch them doze in the shade, their bellies round, their coats glossy, and you wonder what it is like to live without fear of hunger or pain. But you know better than to hope. Hope is as thin as the soup you eat, as fleeting as the kindness of the kitchen. At the end of the day, when you crawl into your bunk and feel the cold seep through the walls, you count the aches in your body, measure your hunger by the rumble of your stomach, pray for a morning when you wake up with more strength than you have, lost in the night. Sometimes you think the sickness will take you too, and you almost wish it would, just for the rest. But rest is as rare as food, as scarce as mercy. You close your eyes and wait for the morning, for the cycle to begin again. On the plantation, hunger and sickness are the only things that never leave you. They are closer than comfort, closer than hope, closer than any friend you will ever have. Some people talk about sleep as if it is a refuge, a place where you can escape the world for a little while. But for you, sleep is not a blessing, it is a negotiation. You lie down every night, hoping your body will find some small patch of peace, but you know better than to expect it. You fall asleep exhausted, your head heavy, your arms and legs sinking into the thin straw, but rest never lasts long. The nights are full of sounds, the shuffling of tired bodies turning on their makeshift pallets, the rasping cough of old Samuel 2 bunks over, the sharp squeak and patter of rats running overhead. Sometimes a baby wails, the mother's voice hushing it with old broken lullabies. Somewhere in the distance, a dog howls. The darkness feels thick and close, pressing in on all sides. There is no warmth except what you steal from the bodies around you, no softness except the memories you try to keep alive in your mind. And then there are the nightmares. You do not need to be asleep for them to find you. Sometimes they come while you are awake, your mind wandering while your hands work. But at night, they are always there, waiting for you behind your closed eyelids. You dream of running, but your legs are too heavy, your feet sinking into mud. You dream of horses stampeding, their hooves pounding closer and closer until you cannot move. You dream of the master's voice, sharp and cold, cutting through the night. You dream of home sometimes, but the faces are always blurred and the door never opens. The worst dreams are the ones that feel almost good, a memory of laughter, a taste of sweet fruit, a touch that is gentle instead of rough. You wake from these dreams with a pain deeper than hunger, a longing so sharp it leaves you breathless. You lie in the dark, trying to remember the sound of your own mother's voice, the way sunlight used to feel on your skin before every day turned to work. If you do manage to sleep for more than an hour at a time, it is always the early bell that drags you back. There is no sunrise slow enough for the stable. Before the first light creeps over the horizon, you are already awake, shaking the straw from your hair, pulling your ragged coat tight against the cold. Your eyes are sticky, your mouth tastes like dust, your muscles ache with the promise of another day. You try not to think about how little you have slept. If you count the hours, you will lose heart. If you let yourself remember how tired you are, you will never get up at all. So you move by instinct, by habit, pushing yourself upright, forcing your feet to the ground. Some mornings you hear the others groan, but no one dares linger. The overseer is always waiting, watching for any sign of weakness, ready to remind you that the day does not wait for anyone, least of all you. You make your way to the stable by the faint light of dawn, the yard slick with dew or frozen mud, depending on the season. Every step feels heavier than the last. Your fingers are stiff, your shoulders hunched, your mind numb with exhaustion. Even the horses seem slow to wake, their eyes dull, their breath steaming in the cold air. It is in these quiet, gray hours that you sometimes catch yourself thinking strange thoughts about what it would feel like to truly rest, to lay down your burden just for a night, to wake up when you are ready instead of when you are forced. You wonder if you would even recognize yourself after a full night's sleep, if the lines on your face would soften, if the anger in your chest would quiet for a little while. But those are dangerous thoughts. On the plantation, hope is a luxury, and sleep is just another chore. You get what rest you can, when you can, and you do not complain. Complaints only bring punishment, and there are always more chores to do, more mouths to feed, more horses to brush and shoe and lead out into the morning. You become a master of moving while half asleep. You carry buckets without spilling, tie knots in the dark, dodge hooves and lashes with only the smallest part of your mind awake. Sometimes you wonder if you are even alive anymore, or just a collection of habits and bruises held together by sheer will. You watch the sky change from black to gray to pale blue, and you know that another day has begun. The nightmares fade into the background, but they never truly leave you. They wait for you at the edges of every thought, every memory, every hour of darkness. Even when you are awake, you are never truly free of them. The others say, rest when you are dead. You laugh quietly because it is the only joke that still feels true. Rest is a word for other people, for people with softer lives, for people who wake up by choice. For you, rest is a rumor, a thing you hear about, but never know. And so you get up again and again, day after day, into the darkness and the cold, your body a machine of bone and pain. You do not remember when you last felt rested. You are not sure you ever will, but the horses need feeding, and the master needs his stables spotless, and the world does not stop for nightmares or tired hands. The night is over, the day has begun, and you are already behind. Every now and then, the world shifts under your feet. Sometimes the master dies, sometimes he marries, sometimes he simply tires of his possessions and trades one plantation for another. You hear rumors long before the day arrives, whispers in the quarters, nervous glances at the big house, the sudden appearance of strange faces with hard eyes and soft hands. Change is coming, the elders say, but you have lived long enough to know that change is just another name for trouble. When it finally happens, when a new master arrives, it feels like the weather changing overnight. The old master's voice is gone, but the emptiness it leaves behind is filled with new voices, new rules, new expectations. Sometimes the new master makes promises, walking through the stable with a wide smile, telling everyone that things will be different now. I run a tight ship, he says, as if you are cargo on an endless ocean. You'll find me fair but firm, he insists, his boots too clean, his eyes always on the horses and never on the people. You hear the words, but you know better than to believe them. You and the others keep your heads down, watching and waiting. The new master inspects the horses, fingers running over their coats, checking teeth, hooves, tails. He asks you questions, sometimes friendly, sometimes sharp, and you answer in the same careful tone you always use, just enough to satisfy, never enough to draw attention. The stables are still the stables, the horses are still hungry and restless in the morning. The air still smells of hay, dung, and sweat. At first, it is almost exciting. A day or two when everything is uncertain, when the routines are disrupted, when the overseers pretend to be kinder because they do not know yet where the line is drawn. There might be new food in the kitchen, a rare taste of something fresh or sweet, a little less shouting for a night or two. Some people let themselves hope. They whisper about easier days, softer hands, a master who believes in mercy. You want to believe too, but hope is a knife that always cuts you in the end. Soon enough, the new master's habits settle in. Sometimes the work changes, a different way to curry the horses, a new rule about where to stack the hay, a stricter count of the buckets or brushes or feed sacks. More often, the work only grows heavier. The new master finds things to fix, things the old master ignored. A squeaky hinge here, a cracked board there, a muddy patch that suddenly becomes your responsibility. The chores multiply, but the hours do not. The punishments change too. Some masters shout more, others prefer silence and cold stares. Some use the whip quickly, without warning, others make you wait, calling you to the house at night, making you stand in the yard while they recite your failures. You quickly learn which is worse. A bruise will heal, but shame settles deeper than the skin. There are always new overseers, men eager to show the new master their worth. They compete for attention, barking orders, finding fault in every gesture, every word. They remind you every day that nothing truly belongs to you, not the work, not the stable, not the shirt on your back, not even your own name, if the new master decides he prefers something easier to remember. You see the fear in the eyes of the others, especially the children. They cling to routines, desperate for something that will not change. The old ones tell stories of other masters, other plantations, other lives, but the lesson is always the same. The chain may change hands, but it never grows lighter. Sometimes the new master brings new horses, young, unbroken, wild eyed creatures that fight the bit and kick at the stall doors. You watch them with a kind of envy. They do not know the rules yet. They still think they can fight, still dream of running free. You remember what it felt like once to believe in escape. With every change, you learn the same lesson over and over. Hope is for other people, not for you. No matter how many times the faces change, the land stays the same. The sun still rises on the same fields, the same stables, the same endless list of chores. The new master may speak with a different accent, may wear finer clothes or softer boots, but in the end, he is just another man holding the reins. One day, maybe, someone will come who really means what he says. Maybe the world will truly turn, and the chains will break, and the stable will be empty, except for the sound of horses running free. Until then, you live as you always have, quietly, carefully, waiting for the next order, the next task, the next proof that nothing ever really changes. You finish your work and stand by the stable door, watching the new master ride out across the fields. The horses run beneath him, their bodies shining in the sun. You turn away, shoulders heavy, and return to the chores. A new master, yes, but the same old chains, only the hands are different. You could try to sum it up: the years, the days, the endless moments strung together like the ragged boards on the stable wall. You have been a groom as long as you can remember, longer maybe than you have even been a person in your own mind. If anyone asked you who you are, you would have to answer with your work. The man who shovels, who brushes, who leads, who feeds, who patches and polishes, who shoes the flies and fears the master more than the horses. Your world is made of dirt, and you carry it everywhere. It cakes your hands, settles into the lines of your palms, collects under your nails until you forget what it is to be clean. Even when you scrub your hands raw at the pump, the stains remain, a permanent mark of the stable, impossible to wash away. You go to bed with the stink of sweat and manure in your hair, wake with straw clinging to your skin, never feeling new, never feeling whole. Some nights you dream of rain that washes everything away: dirt, scars, memory. But when you wake, the world is just as filthy as before. Fear is the other constant. It does not come and go. It is not a thing that visits. It is the air you breathe. Fear of punishment, fear of hunger, fear of making a mistake or not moving quickly enough. Fear of speaking when you should not, or worse, not speaking when you should. Fear of being noticed. Fear of being forgotten. You learn to live with it the way you learn to live with pain or cold or hunger. You do not let it stop you, but you never let it go. Sleeplessness is your inheritance. You never remember the last time you woke up rested. Nights are short and crowded, filled with noise and cold, with dreams that are more exhausting than any day's labor. The nightmares keep coming, the sound of a whip, the sight of a broken horse, the memory of someone's scream. Even when you do sleep, you know it will not last. The dawn is always too early, the chores always waiting. There is a rhythm to it, a terrible predictability. The horses must be fed, the stalls cleaned, the gear checked, the buckets hauled, the shoes fitted. You know every inch of the stable, every quirk of every animal, every squeak and groan of wood and rope. Some say you are lucky not to be in the fields, lucky not to be sold south, not to be chained in iron, not to have your back broken by cotton or cane. But luck is a story for other people. In your world, luck means surviving one more day with only bruises and blisters to show for it. You look at the horses, fat and glossy, and wonder what they would say if they could speak. Would they thank you for the clean stalls, the careful hands, the soft words you whisper when no one else is listening? Or would they simply turn away, knowing that, for all your care, you are no freer than they are? You have seen them come and go, born and die, bought and sold, like tools or barrels of cornmeal. And you know, in some secret place in your mind, that you will leave this world the same way. You have outlasted some masters, survived new overseers, watched children born, and old people buried in shallow graves behind the quarters. You have seen the stable burn in a summer lightning storm, rebuilt it plank by plank. You have lost friends, brothers, maybe even your own children, to hunger, disease, the master's anger, or the auction block. And still, the days keep coming. Your back aches in the morning, your knees creak, your hands are rough and cracked and lined with scars from horseshoes, nails, and the work that never stops. You are tired in a way that sleep will never fix, but you get up. You always get up. Sometimes, at the end of a long day, you sit on the edge of the yard, watching the sun drop below the trees. You feel the wind, sharp with the smell of manure and hay. You wonder for a moment if anyone will remember you when you are gone. You think maybe someone will remember the horses you cared for, the barn you kept standing, the work you did so quietly and well. But the truth is, most likely, you will vanish like all the others before you. You will be replaced, your name forgotten, your grave unmarked. The stable will stand, the horses will eat, the chores will continue. Another pair of hands will do the work. The dirt, the fear, the sleeplessness, they will all belong to someone else. In the end, that is the only thing you can be certain of. You are part of a world that was never made for you. Your life, measured out in endless days and nights, is just another patch of darkness in a world that cannot be made clean. The horses will rest someday. They will go lame, be retired, perhaps even be put out to pasture in the last act of kindness from a master who wants to show off his good nature. You, on the other hand, will only ever know one kind of rest, and it waits at the end of the road, out behind the quarters, where the grass grows high and no one bothers to look. Still, you work. You feed the horses, clean the stalls, mend the gear, wipe the sweat from your brow. You keep your silence, carry your fear, wear your sleeplessness like a second skin. It is not much, but it is yours, and you hold on to it as long as you can. Because here, in the dirt and the dark, even the smallest bit of yourself is all you have.